Welcome to an Alternate Hue. I'm Hugh Anderson, and this is what caught my attention recently. Now, this first graphic is rather jarring. U.S. life expectancy peaked in 2019 at 78 years and 10 months, and then COVID changed the world. Forever. Or did it? The COVID-induced decline was just half as much as the drop during 1942 and 1943 when young soldiers were dying in World War II, and it was just a fraction of the drop between 1917 and 1918 when World War I and the Spanish flu were raging. But what should really bother us about this particular graphic is how much lower our life expectancies are in the U.S., even at the peak in 2019, compared to other countries around the world. Now, what really irritates me is the next graphic. That's right. In the most consumer-driven economy in human history, where shopping for the best deal is an Olympic sport, we're just getting shafted on the cost-benefit scale in healthcare. Now, people usually call organized crime the mafia. Maybe we should look at the healthcare sector instead. Thank you. I'm feeling better now. Nothing like a good rant. Now, this from the Wall Street Journal. The sky is always falling for some people, and Paul Ehrlich in particular. In 1968, the Stanford biologist famously declared that the battle to feed all humanity is over, at a time when the Earth's population was about 3.5 billion people. Today, we have a population of 8 billion who are largely better fed. Yet there was Mr. Ehrlich on a recent 60 Minutes still predicting that humanity is very busily sitting on a limb that we're sawing off. Now, CBS acknowledged that the Green Revolution in agriculture disproved Mr. Ehrlich's prediction of mass famine, but the show went on to suggest that Mr. Ehrlich's repackaged gloom about melting ice caps and the rate of extinction may prove him right after all in saying we're still heading the way of the dinosaur. Now, as with Thomas Malthus, the father of doom and gloomers, the repeated failures of Mr. Ehrlich's predictions of catastrophes to materialize never seem to discourage those who believe human beings are breeding and consuming our way to destruction. The reason these dire prophecies fail is that they ignore the most decisive variable, human ingenuity. In the years since Mr. Ehrlich first forecast apocalypse, human beings have found untold new ways to improve life on Earth. Reclaiming arable land, inventing new medicines, increasing food production, and making clean water more available, and all of this has lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. But Mr. Ehrlich, who's 90 years old and looking pretty good, was born in 1932, when life expectancy for American babies was 61 years. For Americans who will be born in 2023, it's going to be 79 years and 11 months. Note the forecasted rebound back to pre-COVID highs that we talked about just a minute ago. One explanation that much of what Mr. Ehrlich considers to be a population crisis is simply because people are living longer and much less likely to die as infants. Another way of putting it is that Mr. Ehrlich is living proof that we're living through what his intellectual nemesis, Julian Simon, liked to call an epidemic of life. I say, party on, Garth. Now, a new Rasmussen poll reports that 60% of likely U.S. voters agree, including 47 who strongly agree, with the statement that climate change has become a religion that actually has nothing to do with the climate and is really about power and control. 35% disagree with that statement, including 25 who strongly disagree. Talk amongst yourselves because I don't want to argue. Now, this next graphic may just take your breath away. It shows the level of losses in bank investment portfolios compared to prior periods, and these losses are occurring as we speak. Please note the not so great recession period between 2008 and 2009 on the far left. As the Fed continues to unwind its 15-year experiment on your and my money by raising interest rates far too late and certainly at the wrong time, investors are clamoring for them to start cutting rates so we can get back to the good times. Rest assured, the day the Fed announces they're cutting rates, the financial markets will respond with vigor, dare I say even vim. But one should consider the environment that is causing the Fed to cut rates at that time. The economy is probably not going to be in very good shape. So when they do finally cut after the initial burst of enthusiasm, reality, or a hangover sets in, history says the final innings of the bear market will still be in front of us. This graphic shows that on average, the stock market didn't find its ultimate lows for almost 7 more months and a further price decline of over 23%. And if you look at the good old days of 1974, 1980, 1987, and 2020, where the markets didn't take too long to respond, only 1980 never looked back. The rest still had significant price declines. A word to the wise. And finally, according to the United Nations, Africa's population is expected to increase by 2.5 billion people by the year 2100. By way of comparison, during the same period, the entire world's population is forecasted to only grow by 2.4 billion, meaning Africa is going to do all the heavy lifting of having babies. America, Europe, South America, Asia, it's time to pitch in and start having those babies. That's it for this week. Until next time, I'm Hugh Anderson, and this has been an Alternate Hue.